Welcome to the Aria. It's fascinating that over 90% of our viewers connect deeply with our videos, yet choose not to subscribe. Speech Balloon. If you've just joined us, welcome to a place where every story is a journey through hidden truths, unspoken emotions, and endings that leave you breathless. Backhand index pointing right. Still watching but haven't subscribed yet? Now's your moment. Hit that subscribe button, because what's coming next will pull you in deeper than you ever expected. Bell, and don't forget to tap the bell, so you'll never miss the next chapter that just might change everything. Right arrow, one click, one emotional journey. Come with us. In a heartbeat, you can help us create even more remarkable content just for you. The air crackled with tension, wrapping around me like a second skin. The pounding of my heart resonated in my ears, a relentless reminder of the choice that awaited me. My name is Claire, and I am 38 years old. For 12 years, I've been married to David, a man who still kisses me on the cheek each morning before work and reminds me not to forget the plants. We live in a quiet suburban house with quiet routines, quiet dinners, and quieter conversations. No children, just to-do lists, muted exchanges, and the sound of drawers opening and closing like punctuation in the space between us. I work from home as a graphic designer for a niche cookbook publisher, plating images of meals I'll never make and pretending the silence doesn't echo. There's a peace to solitude, but it wears thin over time. I began to feel like a ghost in my own home. Everything had structure, order, but not warmth. David wasn't cruel, just absent in the ways that mattered. Then Ethan entered our lives. He's my sister-in-law's cousin, 27, respectful, a little too quiet. He just moved to the area for a short-term contract and needed a place to stay. David asked me if it was okay for him to stay with us for a few weeks until he found something more permanent. I agreed without much thought. One more quiet person in a quiet house didn't seem like it would disrupt anything. At first, Ethan kept to himself. He did the dishes before I asked, made coffee in the mornings, and left a mug on my desk without a word. No flirtation. If anything, he seemed nervous around me, polite to the point of discomfort, but that created a strange kind of safety. One evening after dinner, David was on a conference call in the living room. I was clearing plates when Ethan stood beside me drying dishes. He asked, "Do you like working from home?" The question felt oddly intimate, like someone had remembered I existed. I laughed. Some days. Other days I miss being asked how I'm doing. He didn't answer, just nodded slowly, his silence feeling like a response more honest than words. From that moment on, something in me began to stir. A few days later, I was in the backyard tearing weeds from the flower bed, knees in the dirt. Ethan came out with 2 beers and sat beside me without a word. We didn't talk much, but we didn't need to. The silence between us wasn't like the silence with David. It didn't feel empty. That night, David went to bed early with another headache. Ethan and I sat on the back porch under the buzz of cicadas. I spoke without thinking, about how I sometimes felt invisible in my own marriage, about how I didn't know when the gap between us began. He listened. He really listened. He said quietly, "You speak like someone who isn't used to being heard." That sentence hit like a wave. I smiled, but I know he saw the crack behind it. It wasn't love. Not yet. But it was something dangerous. A thread pulled loose. From that night on, the air between us began to change. Slightly. Gradually. We still didn't touch. We didn't say anything that crossed a line. But I felt it, like standing too close to a fire. And I didn't move away. I kept telling myself that nothing had happened. We hadn't kissed. We hadn't touched, at least not in any way that could be blamed. A brush of fingers while passing a bowl at dinner. A slight press of the knees when we sat too close on the couch. A hand lingering too long on a doorknob while one of us waited for the other to exit first. All accidental. All ignorable. Except none of it was. The mind plays tricks when you're starving. When you're unseen for long enough, the smallest flicker of light becomes blinding. Ethan didn't try to charm me. That's what made it worse. He just existed, and did so with presence. with awareness. He looked at me like I was a real person, not just a fixture in the home. One night, a storm rolled in. David was already asleep, worn out from a week of late meetings. The house creaked with the wind. I couldn't sleep. I crept downstairs barefoot for a glass of water, careful not to step on the squeaky board near the hallway. I turned on the kitchen light, but only dimly, just enough to see the glow of the microwave clock and the reflection of my own tired eyes in the dark window. Then I heard it. Footsteps. I turned startled. Ethan stood at the threshold of the hallway, shirtless, his hair damp from a shower, sweatpants hanging low on his hips, towels slung around his neck. His expression was soft, concerned. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. "Just couldn't sleep." He moved into the kitchen slowly, like he didn't want to startle the silence. "Me neither," he said. "The wind. It makes everything feel louder." I laughed softly. Or maybe it just makes the silence clearer. We stood there a few feet apart, each holding a glass of water. I didn't offer him a chair. He didn't ask to stay. Yet neither of us left. At one point, he leaned against the counter beside me. Our arms didn't touch, but they could have. I was hyper-aware of every inch between us, every breath, every possibility. "I can't tell if this house is always this quiet," he said, voice barely above a whisper, "or if it's just because you're the only one who sees me in it." I froze. He wasn't looking at me. His eyes were fixed on the sink. I wasn't sure if he meant it the way it sounded, but I didn't ask. I just whispered, "You should go back to bed." "I should." But he didn't move. Eventually, he turned and left, but not before pausing by my side. His hand didn't touch me, but it came close. Close enough that my breath caught in my throat. The next morning, I avoided the kitchen until I heard the front door shut behind him. He said he had errands. I clung to the relief his absence brought, and then hated myself for missing him. That night, David draped a blanket over my shoulders as I watched TV and kissed my forehead like he used to. I should have leaned into him. I should have welcomed the moment. Instead, I flinched, not because I didn't want him, but because I could still feel Ethan's warmth in the kitchen, in the silence, in the space that once belonged to me alone. It happened a few nights later. The laundry room was dim, just the hallway light casting long shadows across the floor. I was folding towels when Ethan came in quietly, shirtless again. Always shirtless. I had never thought much of it before, but now his bare skin felt like a declaration. "You always fold it like that?" he asked, motioning to the way I aligned the edges of the bath towels. I shrugged. "I guess. I like things to look neat, even when no one sees them." He nodded, hands in his pockets. "You see them." That made me smile. Not because it was funny, but because it was true in a way I hadn't admitted before. I kept folding, slowly, each motion more deliberate than the last. He stepped closer, still no contact, but his presence wrapped around me like heat. My breath trembled. "I can help if you want," he offered. "I'm almost done," I said, voice shaking. Then he stepped behind me. His breath hovered near my neck. "Close. Too close. You can stop me," he whispered. I didn't move. His hand brushed the hem of my shirt. Just a whisper of a touch. My fingers clenched the towel in my hand. He moved again, closer this time, his body aligning with mine. Still no pressure, no force. Just waiting. "I shouldn't be here," he murmured. "I know," I whispered back. He turned me around gently. We faced each other, barely inches apart. His eyes searched mine, full of confusion, restraint, desperation. Not lust. Not confidence. Just aching, heavy silence. "You don't have to want this," he said again. "But I do," I breathed. And then he kissed me. Not softly. Not sweetly. It was a kiss full of noise, of buried hunger and broken promises. His mouth crashed against mine like waves against stone, relentless, raw. My hands found his shoulders before I knew they'd moved. His hands gripped my hips. We stumbled against the dryer. I should have stopped it. I didn't. The humming of the machine pulsed beneath me. My back arched against the cold metal. My fingers tangled in his hair. Our breaths collided like lightning, and still we said nothing. Only when it was over, when I was alone again in the silence of that laundry room, heartbeat echoing against the walls, did the weight settle in. My reflection in the hallway mirror showed a woman I didn't recognize. Flushed cheeks, swollen lips, wild eyes. I didn't cry. I didn't regret it, at least not yet. But I knew without question that nothing could ever go back to the way it was, because we had crossed the line. And the worst part? I already knew I would cross it again. I avoided the mirror the next morning. I brushed my teeth without looking up. The steam from the shower clung to the glass, fogging over the evidence I didn't want to confront. But even blurred, I could see it. My swollen lips, the faint red at my neck where Ethan's breath had lingered too long. David was already gone for work. The house felt heavy, not with noise but with presence, ghosts of decisions I hadn't made until they were already done. Ethan didn't come down for breakfast. Later, I heard the front door open and close. He left without a word. No mug on my desk. No footsteps across the kitchen tile. Only his absence remained, and it took up more space than I expected. I spent the day pretending to work, pretending not to listen for footsteps that never came, pretending I didn't replay every moment from the night before in slow motion, examining it like a crime scene. That evening, David made dinner. He rarely cooked, but he tried overcooked chicken and too much garlic. He poured me a glass of wine and sat across from me with a smile that was a little too proud. "I thought we could eat together for once," he said. I smiled back, grateful and guilty all at once. We talked about safe things, the weather, his new client, a broken printer at work. Not once did he ask how I felt. Not once did I offer anything that mattered. When he reached across the table to touch my hand, I didn't flinch, but I didn't feel it either. That night, I stayed up late watching a movie in the living room, wrapped in a blanket. David went to bed after kissing the top of my head. He said good night, the same way he always had, soft, distant routine. Then the door clicked shut, and I was alone again. I didn't expect Ethan to come downstairs. I didn't plan to wait for him. But when I heard the creak of the staircase hours later, my pulse quickened. He stepped into the room cautiously. No words, no smile, just the barest nod in acknowledgement. "I couldn't sleep," he said. I nodded. Neither could I. We didn't talk about the laundry room, didn't mention what had happened, or why it had happened. We didn't sit beside each other on the couch. He stood by the bookshelf, tracing his fingers across the spines like he was searching for something that wasn't there. Eventually, I broke the silence. "I don't know what this is." He turned to face me. "It doesn't have to be anything, but it already is." He nodded once slowly, then added, "I'll leave, if you want me to." I hated how much that offer hurt. "No," I said too quickly. "You don't have to." He looked relieved, and disappointed, and burdened. I understood that mix all too well. The next few days passed like smoke. We barely spoke. We didn't touch. But the tension was a third presence in the room, filling every space between us. My marriage didn't fall apart. It just kept existing like it always had. Quietly, functionally, politely. David thanked me for doing the laundry. He complimented my new design layout. He kissed my forehead instead of my lips. I wanted to scream. Instead, I folded towels I didn't need to fold. Waiting again in the laundry room like a woman chasing déjà vu. Ethan didn't come. Not that night. Not the next. Then, on the fourth day, he found me in the garage, standing on a stool to fix a shelf that had always leaned just slightly to the left. He took the screwdriver from my hand gently. "You don't have to fix it," he said. "But I do," I whispered. We didn't speak after that. He worked in silence. I stood nearby, arms crossed, holding my breath. When he finished, the shelf stood straight for the first time in years. That night, I didn't wait up. I went to bed beside David, who snored gently within minutes. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, hating myself for missing someone I barely knew. A week passed. Ethan kept his distance. I pretended that was what I wanted. Then came the moment that unraveled everything. It was late afternoon. I had just come home from the grocery store and walked into the kitchen to find him standing there, shirt stained from paint or dust. Something manual, something honest. He was wiping his hands with the rag. "Didn't expect you back so soon," he said. I tried to smile. "You fixed something else?" "Just the cabinet hinge." It was squeaking. David lived with that squeak for 5 years. He smirked. "Guess I'm just stubborn." There was a pause, and then he said something that shattered my defenses. "I notice things, especially when no one else does." I felt my chest tighten. My arms tingled. I dropped the grocery bag too hard on the counter. An apple rolling out and landing near his foot. He picked it up and placed it in the fruit bowl. And then as he turned to leave, he brushed past me. Not harshly, not boldly, but deliberately. His hand grazed the small of my back. I froze. He didn't stop walking, and I didn't stop thinking about that touch for the rest of the day. The morning after Ethan's touch, I wandered the house like a stranger in my own skin. I rearranged the spice cabinet, reorganized the bathroom drawers, swept the back patio even though it didn't need sweeping. I told myself it was just restlessness, but I knew better. David kissed my cheek before heading out the door. "Don't forget we have dinner with my brother Saturday." I nodded. Of course. Routine. Always the routine. I watched him drive away, then stood in the doorway longer than I should have, listening to the silence settle again. And when I turned, I found Ethan at the base of the stairs. He wasn't supposed to be home. "Forgot my keys," he said, holding them up. But his voice was tight. He looked at me like he could see the storm under my skin. "I thought you were gone," I whispered. I was. We stood there, neither of us stepping closer, neither of us pulling away. "Claire," he said, softer now. "Tell me to go." I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. He didn't move. I didn't either. Eventually, I walked past him up the stairs into my room. I closed the door, leaned my forehead against it, and exhaled so hard it hurt. I didn't cry, but I wanted to. That night, we were all in the same house again. David watching TV, me cooking dinner, Ethan fixing something small in the garage, just loud enough for me to know he was near. It was unbearable. Every time I heard his footsteps, my body tensed. Every time David called my name from the living room, I felt like I was lying. After dinner, David went to bed early. Another headache. Another "I'm fine." I didn't ask questions. I didn't follow him upstairs. Instead, I wandered into the laundry room again, just to feel something familiar, something real. I folded towels that were already folded, smoothed wrinkles that didn't exist. Then I heard the sound of bare feet against tile. I didn't turn around. "You always fold them that way?" Ethan's voice asked, low and cautious. A bitter smile crept onto my lips. Apparently, he moved behind me, slow and measured. His presence washed over me like heat. "You said you didn't want this," I whispered. "No," he said, breath brushing against my ear. "I said you could stop me." "You didn't." I turned then, towel forgotten. We were inches apart. Again, his hand reached up, hovered near my face, then dropped. "I shouldn't be here." "I know, but I am." I stepped forward. His hand found the small of my back again, steady and patient. I leaned into it. We stood like that for a long time. No words, no movement, just the soft hum of the dryer and the loud truth in our silence. Then I whispered, "If this is a mistake, it's already mine." He kissed me again. Slower this time. Not hungry, just real. A connection long starved. And still in the background, I heard the upstairs floorboard groan. My stomach twisted. Reality wasn't far away. It was just asleep, upstairs, snoring into a dark room that once belonged to us. But in that moment I stayed. Not because I was brave. Not because I didn't care. But because the loneliness had finally become louder than the guilt. Morning came like punishment. The light was too harsh. The walls felt too narrow. I moved through the house as if it belonged to someone else. Careful, distant, rehearsed. David was already in the kitchen, dressed for work, sipping his coffee with that same half-smile he always wore. I wondered if he could feel it, the shift in the air, the crack in the routine, the ghost of something that didn't belong. "You sleep okay?" he asked. I nodded. Lied. He reached out and brushed a crumb from my shoulder. It was nothing, but it made me flinch anyway. I turned away to pour myself coffee. My hands shook slightly, but I kept them steady enough to go unnoticed. He didn't press. He never did. "I'll be late tonight," he added. "Client dinner. Shouldn't be long." I forced a smile. "Take your time." And just like that, he was gone. When the door shut behind him, I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. I sat at the table alone, listening to the echo of silence that had once been unbearable, but now felt necessary. Ethan didn't come down that morning, or the one after. On the third day, I found a note on the counter in handwriting that was careful and unsure. "Claire, I need space to breathe. You deserve more than a shadow. Please don't hate me for leaving quietly. E." I stared at it for a long time, fingers pressed to the edge of the paper. I didn't cry. Instead, I slid the note into the back of a drawer, beneath receipts and old birthday cards. Somewhere safe. Somewhere I wouldn't find it unless I needed to. That night, we had family over, David's brother, his wife, their teenage son. The house buzzed with laughter, passing plates, clinking glasses. I smiled in all the right places, told stories I didn't care about, laughed on cue. Then someone knocked on the door. I opened it. Ethan stood there, holding a pie from the grocery store, his eyes shadowed with regret. He offered a small smile, one that didn't quite reach his eyes. I felt everything in me twist. David walked past and clapped him on the back. "You're just in time." I stepped aside. Ethan entered. We crossed paths later in the hallway, him heading for coats, me toward the bathroom. We stopped inches apart. "I just wanted to say," he began, but the words failed him. "You don't have to," I said. "I know." He leaned in, not to kiss me, but to whisper something soft and cruel and kind all at once. "You exist, Claire, even when no one sees it." Then he turned and left, and I stood alone, pressed against the wall, breath caught in my throat, the house creaking back into its silence. Only this time